Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick, founder of Herbal 411, and this is the unboxing today. It's a book. Darn, you have to read something, right? It's not that thick, it's not that big, but this is a book by Alyssa Epley. And I heard about her through a podcast from my favorite podcaster, Andrew Huberman. And what struck me as very tangible was the way she broke down the buckets of how to take care of chronic stress. There's no question chronic stress affects the way you think, affects the way you behave, affects the way you heal, affects your immunity, affects our digestion, and we're just surrounded by a lot of it. But when we are bombarded by stressor after stressor after stressor, then usually what happens is you'll be able to react to it and defend and or come up with contemplation that this will be over, I'll just fix this, and you'll fix things. But if you have no respite and you have one stressor after the next stressor after the next stressor, then sometimes you'll fall into this thing called default network. The brain has a way to shrink back to default network, or almost like a reptilian kind of existence. So in case you don't want to or can't think and can't problem solve, you'll be able to defend. The problem is that is a good thing, but the problem is if you stay in the default network, you will live life, your immunity, your sleep, your love, you'll live everything at a sense of defense. And that's not the way you're supposed to get through life. There's supposed to be a balance between defense or stress response and love response. Hopefully more love response than anything, but what I came across with her suggestions are 3 different ways to take care of chronic stress. The first way is a top-down method. And I'm going to repurpose her definitions to my own way. Top-down method uses things that you've learned from your counselor, from your psychologist, from your pastor, from your elders, from your parents, and old techniques. But sometimes old techniques don't serve you in the new world. But you learn these things to negate the negative thought bubbles that pop up, and also give you a sense of, I can defeat this. It'll be temporary. So that's top-down. If you don't have that many top-down methods, then you need to develop a robust amount of coping skills. You might want to see a psychologist. And I have interviewed a couple psychologists in the past that are really good. I'll put the links down below in the description. If you can't default to that, then there's another method. And the other method is pure adrenaline. You can produce your own hormones, meaning dopamine, serotonin, endorphin, enkephalin, even sometimes epinephrine when you want to do it. You can put all that stuff out, but you have to use muscle to do it. And that's what I call inside out expression. And the way that bucket is different, because if you exercise or have ever tried to exercise or go into a class, you'll notice that as you leave that class or finish your exercise, you'll feel actually pretty high. You'll feel good with the endorphin and enkephalin rush. Those 2 hormones are released when you exercise, and they're supposed to be protective. In case you get injured by a saber-toothed tiger and he bites your leg, you still should be able to run away from the tiger or defend yourself, even though your leg's falling off, because of the endorphin and enkephalin response. Well, you can induce that to a certain degree if you exercise. If you don't exercise, you got to be careful. If you just start to do that to take care of suffering, mental anguish, you might end up with a lot of musculoskeletal pain. So get some training first, but that's another way that a lot of us weekend warriors or athletes or older athletes will try to negate stress and chronic stress. The third method is just surround yourself with everything beautiful. So I put down a couple things, and I have a calming practice, and I admittedly will sometimes walk away from the calming practice because I'm just too overwhelmed with stress. But if you have a calming practice that you can deploy, and it's really easy, a 15-minute breath exercise. You don't have to go anywhere. You can just do it. And I'll be filming the transformation of my exercise area of my studio in the house to the meditative area of the studio. And if you were ever a patient of mine in Advocate, I had 3 rooms that I ran for patient care. I would usually not touch the 3rd room. I'd just see patients in 2 rooms, and the 3rd room would just be for storage or the EKG machine. Well, I converted that 3rd room to where I would do unboxings and I would meditate. So I bought a doggy pillow, which is a big pillow. I put it on top of a wooden platform that I built, and I would close the door and I'd go in there and meditate. I admittedly I didn't do much meditation towards the last parts of my working for Advocate because I was totally stressed out. Not from patient care, just from administrative care. And I kind of let it go. But I'm going to transform my studio where I record in my house to a healing center. So I'm going to show you my sanctuary that I'm going to build on my own. And I'll film it as I go. But other things that you can do on your own if you don't have a sanctuary that you've declared in your house. Nature therapy, if you surround yourself with beautiful places, and that's why I take people to bucket list places, is because I want to have them remember that when the stress comes up, if you remember, I remember being on top of Mount Whitney, or I remember being at Bryce Canyon during sunrise. Those are memories that my patients and my hikers will never forget. And sometimes when the shit hits the fan, if you just think back to those times and how good you felt, then that will bubble up a whole bunch of great hormone that will negate the bad hormone that your default network puts you in, or the annoying coworker puts you in, or the tailgating person while driving to work puts you in. So there's ways to surround yourself. There's also other things, laughter, hugs from people, watching a hug. You don't have to get a hug if you don't want to hug anybody, but watching somebody get a hug also increases the serotonin in the person that's observing that. And then sometimes prayer. I never try to push prayer because I don't want to push religion on anybody, but I think that's what has saved me. And I have been a Catholic. I've been on and off with being really diving deep into the church, but then sometimes moving away when I needed my space. But I always return back into that because that's how I was brought up, and I really think that's what saves me. Now, you don't have to have a religion, but you should have a mindful practice, and if you don't, you're missing out on the third bucket. So the third bucket to neutralize chronic stress is genius. If you surround yourself in nature, if you get a picture of a loved one, let me show you my picture. Picture of a loved one, surround yourself in nature, get a pet for therapy. If you get all those things or bring back laughter, you will reverse disease. I can't tell you how many stories there are out there of people getting stressed out and taking on more infectious symptoms than the person that's not stressed out. So there's definitely studies that show the more stressed you are, the sicker you get, the more cravings you get, the fatter you get, the more disease gets ramped up. And the happier you are, sometimes all that cholesterol doesn't stick anywhere, or the sugar doesn't stay, or the cravings don't come. But you have to find your own happiness. Here's a picture that I use. It's better to have a Polaroid, a paper picture, but this is my father. And he loved to deliver babies. This is my mom when I won my first bodybuilding contest. She came out and surprised me, and I've never seen her smile like that again, at least until I had my daughter. Then she had a huge smile when she came over and witnessed the birth of my child. They weren't in there, they just came in after we finished up and delivered Gabrielle. But suffice it to say, there are times in your life when you can show pictures to yourself and remind yourself, hey, wait a minute, I remember that day. And then just for that split second of observing the picture, your hormones pick up, and that gets you out of default. So I think that this will probably be a very good book. If you like reading books, great. If not, I don't know if she has an audiobook, but I think that we're all surrounded by stress and we need breaks from that. And if you don't have a break except for, say, smoking or alcohol, that's not good. That'll be a temporary fix that'll put you down into a deeper hole. So you really have to invest in a little bit of a change, but hopefully small changes, little chunked down changes applied over the course of time will give you at least direction. And a lot of times when you're suffering, like a lot of my patients are, if you have direction or a map, it still gives you reassurance. If you have no map and you're going to be stuck in default, that's an endless hell. So try to pick yourself up. Know that there are people that are praying for you and thinking about you. And if you have any other comments or questions about the way you've healed yourself, please put them in the comment section down below. And consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. And I'll see you at the next video.